rusted-out Freightliner sleeper cab on a gravel lot behind a truck salvage yard in rural Oklahoma. Flat tires, stripped interior, mice living in the mattress compartment. Nobody wanted this thing for over a year, but 6 weeks later, that same cab had working lights, a comfortable bed, a kitchen with running water, and enough storage to hold everything one man needed to live on the road. Total cost of the entire conversion came to $250. So how does a broke truck driver with no construction experience pull that off? 3 years before that Freightliner showed up on his radar, a driver named Marcus Webb was pulling 60-hour weeks hauling freight between Dallas and Memphis on the I-40 corridor. He drove for a mid-size carrier, slept in company trucks, and sent most of his paycheck home to cover child support and his mother's medical bills. After taxes, insurance, and all his obligations, Marcus had about $200 a month left for himself. That kind of money doesn't go far when you're living on truck stop food and laundromat quarters. But the truck was free housing, so Marcus made it work. The company provided the sleeper cab. He spent his off hours parked at rest stops and truck stop lots across 3 states. Then the carrier folded, lost a major contract, cut half its fleet overnight. Marcus got a call on a Tuesday morning telling him to drop the truck at the terminal in Little Rock by Friday. Just like that, his housing and his income disappeared at the same time. 4 months of couch surfing and loading trailers at warehouses later, he landed a gig as an owner-operator lease driver. The money was better, but the truck he was assigned had no sleeper cab at all, just a day cab, a seat, a steering wheel, and nowhere to sleep. Marcus had 2 choices: rent a room he couldn't afford every night he was away from home, or figure out something else. He figured out something else. He started browsing online listings for used sleeper cab shells, the detachable kind that bolt onto the frame behind a day cab. Brand new. These run $8,000 to $25,000. Used ones in decent shape still cost $3,000 to $5,000. Even a rough one with cosmetic damage was listed around $1,500. He didn't have $1,500. He had maybe $300 in his checking account after bills. That's when he found the salvage yard listing. A 2006 Freightliner Columbia sleeper shell, stripped of its wiring harness and HVAC components, with visible rust on the lower panels and a cracked side window. The listing said, "For parts or scrap," and the asking price was $100. Marcus offered $85 and the yard accepted the same day. His buddy Tyler helped him haul it on a flatbed trailer to a friend's property outside Tulsa. And when Marcus finally climbed inside that sleeper shell for the first time, standing in exposed metal framing and mouse droppings and the smell of old diesel, he asked himself a very honest question: what did I just buy? The interior was roughly 6 feet deep by about 7 feet wide, with a ceiling height of around 5.5 feet, about the same footprint as a walk-in closet. The floor was bare corrugated metal with rust stains along the edges. The walls were exposed steel ribs with strips of shredded fiberglass hanging between them like cobwebs. One of the side windows was cracked diagonally from corner to corner. Through the other window, which was somehow still intact, Marcus could see Tyler standing by the flatbed trailer shaking his head. People have converted smaller spaces into livable setups. The question wasn't whether it could be done. The question was whether Marcus could do it for the money he had left. He sat down that night at a folding table on the friend's property with a notebook and a calculator and wrote out every single thing the space needed to function as a home. Insulation, a sleeping surface, lighting, a way to charge his phone, storage for clothes and tools, a cooking setup, and water. Even if it was just a basic gravity-fed jug, he needed access to water inside the cab. After the $85 purchase, he had $215 left. No credit cards, no side fund, no borrowing from family. $215 to turn a metal box into a place to live. The first job was gutting everything that was already ruined. The old insulation was damp and moldy, so it all came out in garbage bags. The interior wall panels were warped particle board that fell apart when he pulled on them. He stripped the shell down to bare metal, swept out every piece of debris, and spent a full afternoon scrubbing the floor and walls with bleach solution. Then came the rust. The lower panels had surface rust from years of water pooling inside. Marcus used navel jelly on the worst spots, scrubbing it on with a wire brush and letting it sit before wiping it clean. He followed that up with a spray-on rust converter from an auto parts store that cost him $4. This decision seemed small at the time. It wasn't. That $4 can of rust converter probably saved the entire build from falling apart within a year. With the shell cleaned and treated, insulation was next. And this is where the budget should have killed the project, because commercial spray foam or rigid foam boards from a hardware store would have eaten half his remaining cash on insulation alone. Instead, Marcus spent 2 evenings driving around to construction sites and apartment renovations near Tulsa, asking foremen if he could take their styrofoam scraps. Most said yes without hesitation, because they'd have to pay to dump it otherwise. He filled the bed of Tyler's pickup truck twice with reclaimed rigid foam panels in various thicknesses, cut them to fit the wall cavities with a bread knife and a straight edge, and friction fitted them between the metal ribs of the sleeper shell. For the ceiling, he used reflective bubble wrap insulation from a damaged roll he found at a flea market for $3. The seller had dropped it in a puddle, and the cardboard core was soggy, but the insulation itself was fine. Marcus stapled it across the entire ceiling with the reflective side facing inward. Total insulation cost came to $7, including the staples. But insulated walls covered in bare foam and metal ribs aren't livable. They needed covering, and Marcus didn't have the budget for paneling. That's where the pallet wood came in. He disassembled 6 wooden pallets from behind a grocery distribution center. Free lumber, just sitting in a pile waiting for the trash hauler. He sanded the boards by hand using 80 grit sandpaper, which took an entire weekend and left his arms feeling like concrete. Then he cut them to length with a borrowed circular saw and screwed them onto the wall, framing over the insulation. The result looked like a rustic cabin interior. Rough, sure. A few boards had old nail holes and stenciled shipping marks, but the walls were warm, solid, and had more character than any factory panel. So the shell was insulated, the walls looked decent, and Marcus started feeling like this might actually work. But now he needed electricity, and he knew absolutely nothing about wiring. He spent 2 nights watching YouTube videos on basic 12-volt electrical systems for vans and RVs. The concept was simple enough: a deep cycle battery as the power source, connected to a fuse box, running LED lights and a USB outlet. The execution was where it got tricky. Marcus found a used deep cycle marine battery at a secondhand store for $20, the kind people use on fishing boats, rated at 100 amp hours. Not new, but it held a charge when he tested it. He bought a small fuse box, some 14-gauge wire, and a pack of crimp connectors from the auto parts store for another $12. The LED strip lights were $5 for a 16-foot roll from a dollar store. He mounted the battery in a plastic storage tub under the bed platform and ran wires through the wall studs to 3 separate zones: ceiling lights, a reading light above the bed, and a USB charging hub he'd salvaged from a broken power strip. The first time he flipped the switch, nothing happened. He spent an hour tracing wires with a flashlight before he found a bad crimp connector on the main line from the battery to the fuse box. One loose connection had killed the entire circuit. He cut the connector off, stripped the wire, crimped a new one tighter, and tried again. The LED strip across the ceiling lit up the interior of the sleeper cab for the first time. Marcus said he sat there on the plywood bed platform for a solid 5 minutes just looking at it. The whole system pulled so little power that the battery could run the lights for about 5 days before needing a recharge. And here's the detail that made the whole electrical system work long-term. Marcus found a broken solar-powered patio light kit at a garage sale for $2. The solar panel still worked. The battery and LED inside were dead, but the panel itself was a small 6-watt unit that put out enough current to trickle charge his deep cycle battery during daylight hours. He mounted it on the roof of the sleeper shell with silicone caulk and ran the wires through a drilled hole sealed with a rubber grommet. Total electrical system cost $39. If you're getting something out of this, hit subscribe. I cover builds, truck life, and budget living setups every week. Now, you can handle the small space. You can deal with not having a bathroom. You can figure out the cooking situation. But the thing that actually breaks people who try to live in a truck cab is the cold. Metal conducts heat away from your body faster than almost any other common building material. Sleeping inside an unheated metal box in January in Oklahoma, where nighttime temperatures regularly drop into the 20s, is not uncomfortable. It's dangerous. Marcus learned this the hard way during his first cold snap in the cab. He had a regular sleeping bag rated to 40 degrees, completely useless once the temperature outside dropped below freezing. He woke up at 3 in the morning shivering so hard his teeth hurt. His breath was visible inside the cab. The metal walls felt like touching the inside of a refrigerator. The insulation helped keep the wind out, but without a heat source, the interior temperature still dropped close to outside ambient within a few hours. He tried layering blankets. He tried wearing every piece of clothing he owned to bed. He even tried running his truck's engine for heat, which burned fuel he couldn't afford and filled the cab with a faint diesel smell that gave him headaches. For about 2 weeks, Marcus barely slept. He'd doze off for a couple of hours, wake up freezing, and spend the rest of the night sitting up with his jacket zipped to his chin waiting for sunrise. That's not sustainable. Not when you're driving a loaded truck 8 hours the next day. The real fix came from another driver at a rest stop near Amarillo who told Marcus about a thermal bivvy called TerraShell. It's basically an emergency sleeping system that uses a reflective lining to bounce your own body heat back at you. You climb in, and within a few minutes, your body creates this warm pocket inside the bivvy that stays comfortable even when the air around you is freezing. No batteries, no fuel, nothing to plug in. It just uses physics. Marcus ordered a bundle for less than the cost of a gas station dinner. That first night using it, he said he slept better than he had in weeks. The cab was still cold around him, but inside the bivvy, it felt like being wrapped in a warm cocoon. He keeps one in his cab permanently now and bought extras for his go bag and his mom's house. You can find TerraShell linked in the description. So, the sleeping situation was solved, but Marcus still needed a kitchen, and that meant figuring out cooking, water, and storage inside a space smaller than most bathroom closets. He built a pull-out cooking shelf from a piece of plywood mounted on 2 drawer slides pulled from an old filing cabinet at a thrift store. $3 for the slides. The plywood was leftover from the bed platform. He mounted a single-burner propane camp stove on the shelf, the kind you can pick up at any big box store for about $15. The shelf slides out through the side door of the sleeper cab, so he cooks outside when the weather is decent, and can pull it just far enough out to vent through a cracked window when it's raining. Water was the simplest system in the whole build. A 5-gallon bucket with a screw-on lid and a plastic spigot drilled into the bottom. The spigot cost $4. The bucket was free from a bakery throwing out old frosting containers. He fills it at truck stop water stations and gets about 3 days of use out of 5 gallons, which covers drinking, cooking, and basic hand washing. For a sink, he cut a hole in a small plastic tub from the dollar store and ran a short piece of tubing to a second bucket underneath that catches gray water. $1 for the tub, $2 for the tubing, and a tube of silicone. It drains slowly, and it's not going to win any design awards, but it works every single day without leaking. Storage was the last major system, and Marcus handled it with military precision. Under the raised bed platform, 4 plastic milk crates collected for free from behind a convenience store. Each crate holds a different category: clothes, tools, food and cooking supplies, personal items. On the wall above the bed, a row of dollar store hooks for his jacket, hat, headphones, and keys. A small mesh pocket organizer hangs next to the door for his phone, wallet, and flashlight. The fold-down desk was one of his proudest solutions. He took a cabinet door from a kitchen renovation dumpster, sanded and sealed it, and attached it to the wall with 2 small hinges. A single folding leg bracket from the hardware store holds it level when open and folds flat against the wall when closed. Marcus uses it to eat meals, fill out logbook paperwork, and scroll his phone at night. A typical evening in the cab looks something like this. Marcus parks at a truck stop, slides the cooking shelf out through the side door, and makes dinner on the camp stove. Usually rice with canned vegetables or pasta with sauce. He eats at the fold-down desk with the LED reading light on. After dinner, he washes his dishes in the dollar store sink, refills his water bottle from the 5-gallon bucket, and folds the desk back against the wall. Then he stretches out on the bed platform, charges his phone from the USB hub, and reads or watches something on his phone until he falls asleep. It's not a studio apartment, but it's a routine, and routines make small spaces feel like home. The cracked side window got patched with a piece of clear acrylic sheeting cut to size and sealed with silicone. $5 for the acrylic, and it's held up through 2 Oklahoma summers and a winter so far. When you add it all up, the numbers are hard to believe. $85 for the sleeper shell, $7 total for insulation, $0 for the pallet wood walls, $39 for the complete electrical system including the solar panel, and roughly $119 spread across the camp stove, water system, cooking shelf, desk bracket, window repair, and every small purchase from dollar stores and auto parts shops. Grand total, $250 even. 6 months into living in the converted sleeper cab, Marcus has some thoughts on what he'd do differently. He'd invest in better weather stripping around the door seals earlier because he lost a lot of heat through gaps he didn't notice until the first cold front. He'd add a small vent fan in the ceiling for summer because Oklahoma heat inside a metal box is brutal, and his only current solution is opening both windows and hoping for a breeze. And he'd mount the battery somewhere more accessible because right now checking the water level means crawling under the bed platform with a flashlight. But when you ask Marcus whether the build was worth it, he doesn't hesitate. Before the conversion, he was spending between $400 and $600 a month on motel rooms, truck stop showers, and eating out 3 meals a day because he had no kitchen. Some months it was even higher, depending on the route and how many nights he was on the road. Now his monthly overhead for housing is essentially $0. He showers at truck stops for about $12 a week. He buys groceries at Walmart instead of eating fast food at rest stops, which cut his food costs roughly in half. Between housing and food savings, Marcus estimates he's keeping an extra $500 to $700 a month that used to vanish before he could blink. He puts that money directly into paying down debt and building an emergency fund. After 6 months, he'd already saved enough to cover 3 months of bills if something went wrong. That's a safety net he never had before. The sleeper cab isn't fancy. The pallet wood walls have visible knots and rough patches. The electrical system is basic. The kitchen is a camp stove on a sliding shelf, but it's dry, it's warm, it's his, and it costs less than a single month of motel rooms used to cost him. That rusted Freightliner sleeper shell sitting on a gravel lot in Oklahoma, the one nobody wanted for over a year, the one the salvage yard practically begged someone to haul away, turned out to be exactly what Marcus needed. Not just a place to sleep between loads. A way out of the cycle of spending everything he earned just to survive another week on the road. If you want to see more builds like this, or you want to see what this cab looks like after Marcus adds a few upgrades, hit subscribe and click the video on screen right now for another conversion that cost even less than this one.